Okay, so I generally think of myself as some sort of comic fan, but I realize with the release of Dark Phoenix, I have not seen any X-Men movie besides Deadpool 2. And I thought, oh no, does that make me a fake comic book fan? So I decided to do the thing I do best, which is talk at length as if I know what I'm talking about, but not actually know what I'm talking about. To validate my ignorance of the X-Men cinematic universe, I brought my friend Ultrox Infinity, who has seen the X-Men movies, with me, so I could explain to him what really went down in the X-Men movies. This is that Discord call. So how this is going to work is you're going to give me a list of the X-Men movies and everything in that X-Men movie universe in order of being released. Do you think you could type that up into the chat here?
Yes.
And what's going to happen is I'm going to take each one. I have a little notepad thing that the viewers can see on OBS, where I'm going to write down each one. I'm going to explain to you what happened in that movie, despite the fact that I have not seen a single X-Men Universe movie, with the exception of Deadpool 2. I am going to tell you what happens in each one, and then on my little notepad, I'm going to try to figure out where it's supposed to fit in the timeline.
Oh boy.
So this is going to be a little X-Men lore, if you will, from a truly certified master. I'm going to start off with X-Men, the first in the chronological list. What year did X-Men come out?
That came out in the year 2000.
Oh, Jesus, okay. So X-Men. Alright, there's only like 2 X-Men plots. Either, oh, boo-hoo, we're mutants, we're discriminated against, let's make a cure, oh no, we need to accept ourselves for who we are, or Magneto is being evil and doing evil stuff. I bet it's a basic plot line in which Magneto has his Brotherhood of Mutants. I know a little bit of, like, terminology and some characters just from the comics, and just the general zeitgeist, but Magneto's got his Brotherhood of Mutants. They're out in some woods, probably. I mean, if you ask me to picture the X-Men trilogy, I just see Magneto standing in the woods with a bunch of people. I know in one of these movies there's like this attack at this place, and then like Juggernaut says, "I'm the Juggernaut." No, X-Men 1, Brotherhood of Mutants, general plotline. For Charles Xavier's like, I have these people at this school and we will fight you. That is the definitive plot of X-Men 1.
You know, that's not too far off.
Alright, next on the list, X2. I have no idea. I'm going to assume X2 takes place after X-Men. So if X-Men was
you're never going to get this one.
in this Radix universe, if X-Men 1 was Magneto versus X-Men, that means X2 would have to be the other plotline of boo-hoo, we're mutants. And then some science dude's like, I have a cure. This is like some homosexual correction therapy, and like some mutants are gonna be like, yeah, let's do this, but like others, like Wolverine's gonna go, hey, I think we need to accept who we are for who we are and whatever. And then there's gonna be like the scientist people are actually evil and are doing something evil with the mutants, and then like the X-Men have to like beat up some scientist or something, and then they save the day and the world begins to accept mutants. That's what I'm betting X2 is about. X-Men The Last Stand. I'm assuming that happens after X2, because this is the last stand, and you can't have a last stand before 1 and 2. I'm gonna say freaking Sentinels. Yeah. The big, is that what the big robot things in the comics are called, that like hunt down mutants?
Yes, sir.
I'm betting that after X2, everyone's all chill with mutants and they're all accepting, but like one person's gonna be, I am a racist analog and I think we need to put Muslims under increased surveillance, and so they create Sentinels, and the Sentinels are watching over the X-Mansion and whatever. And then Magneto pops up. Oh, call back to the first movie, right? And Magneto pops up and is like, oh, people thought you could have peace with the mutants, but I do stuff with metal. And then he does some terrorist stuff. Good old 9/11. This is the early 2000s. 9/11 should still be in our minds. When
Magneto can move steel beams.
And so the Sentinels are deployed, and the X-Men are like, hey, hashtag not all mutants. And then, like, it's really the people who use the Sentinels are evil, and the X-Men fight them, but after Magneto does some stuff, and then Magneto's like, Charles, don't you see? The humans hate us! Oh, I was a Jew in the Holocaust! And that's when he drops that bomb on Charles, and Charles is like, I can't be enemies with a Holocaust survivor. And the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants team up against the racist Sentinels and bring peace to the world. That is my definitive X-Men trilogy. That's the plot.
I'd say the first one you're doing all right with, but kind of diverge from there.
Right.
X2 is... It's about... It brings in the Stryker plot. Do you even know who Stryker is?
I do not know. No, I actually don't know. Is that like some sort of Weapon X thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
An X-Men is brain controlled into fighting the president.
Why is it that the real story sounds more stupid than mine?
Mainly, it deals with brainwashing mutants into doing evil things, is what X2 is about.
And then The Last Stand? Oh, dear God. There's a solid snake in there with you.
Surprisingly, you're pretty close with X2.
Oh, is it one of those, the Cure stuff?
Yeah, it's about the Cure.
I knew it. They had to have a versus Magneto, and they had to have a Cure plot. Those are the only two real X-Men movies.
I was like, you're so close. And also, it deals a little bit in the Dark Phoenix plotline. But
I thought, then what's the Dark Phoenix movie coming out?
Oh, it's too complicated to say.
Oh, all right, okay. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Now, I'm going to place this before X-Men Wolverine. Now, with such a weird name, is it safe to assume that there are supposed to be more X-Men Origins?
That was the plan.
In my X-Men Origins Wolverine, it's the origin of Wolverine. We see him, I don't know, fight in the Civil War, free a slave, maybe. Wait. Did Wolverine fight in the American Civil War?
He did.
Isn't he Canadian?
Kinda.
Oh, okay. Maybe we get to see more flashbacks, but I'm sure there's some sort of Weapon X adamantium claws replacing Bone Claws stuff. I just don't know what. Maybe he does like some missions with Weapon X, but if it's X-Men Origins, that tells me he's gonna join the X-Men at the end of this. So, I know something from Origins Wolverine. There's freaking Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, has his mouth sewn shut with the blades from his hands. I remember the hatred on the internet about that. Which means Deadpool is in Weapon X. I know in the after credit scene or whatever of Deadpool 2, they take a Origins Wolverine scene and it's Wolverine standing down Deadpool. So that must mean Wolverine fights Deadpool. Wolverine, maybe he finds out Weapon X is doing something evil, and he's like, I'm not evil, bub, and then he, like, tries to rebel, and then they, like, send in weird Deadpool to fight him, and then Wolverine
Every
defeats...
time you call him Deadpool, I just cry a little bit.
And then Wolverine defeats Ryan Reynolds and runs away, and then, like, the after credits scene is him, like, running around in a forest, and then Charles Xavier swivels in on a chair, and he's like, oh, Logan... And that's where it ends. Was I close?
I'd say you weren't too far off. You're right. He's recruited by Stryker and does some Weapon X stuff. Gets his claws. They did fight in the Civil War.
Okay.
At some points. It was just in a montage at the beginning.
Oh, see, I knew you had to have a montage of, like, history at the beginning of a Wolverine Origins movie.
He realizes that they're evil and fights them. And fights Deadpool. The only thing you miss is that he then gets amnesia at the end of the movie and is not recruited. But other X-Men are recruited by Xavier at the end, so you're pretty close.
Okay. Next up is X-Men First Class. Oh.
You don't know how you're going to understand that. So they get on a plane, and it's in first class.
Right now, that's the only thing I have to do. It either has to happen before X-Men or after The Last Stand. This is either a prequel or a sequel, and given the fact that I don't know if it's a prequel or a sequel, that should tell you how much I know about this movie.
You don't remember any advertising for this movie.
I don't remember any advertising. I vaguely remember something about the Cuban Missile Crisis, but looking ahead on the list, I think there's a different one that goes with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm gonna stick it after The Last Stand, and it's about... Well, wait a minute. What if it's like the first class at Xavier's school?
Oh?
Hold on, I'm putting this before X-Men. In between X-Men Origins Wolverine, what a stupidly long name, and X-Men. It's about Xavier bringing in some people, like, oh, you're mutants. And he probably has hair at this point. If this was still in the Radix timeline, this might be before the after credits scene in Wolverine, where he, like, shows up to meet Wolverine in the forest in this weird timeline. In First Class, he's gathering people, he takes them to school, and he's like, welcome to X-Men First Class. It's like one of those moments where they say the movie title in the movie. And it's about Cyclops, yeah, because he's a dude. And Cyclops is like, oh, Professor, I can't see without my glasses. And Xavier's like, here, have this red thing. I don't know why I make Charles sound like a really old man. And it's especially if I say he has hair in First Class. It's the story of Cyclops' glasses during his first class, and he's trying to learn his powers. Okay, if it's a First Class, the X-Men's getting together, they have to fight their first villain. The first villain who fought the First Class is Mr. Sinister a dude? Am I vaguely remembering a character correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so they fight Mr. Sinister. I am Sinister, and I want humanity to fear the mutants, and it's just retreading the whole Magneto line. But Cyclops defeats Mr. Sinister with his like heat vision, and Sinister's like, "Oh no, I was defeated." And he looks to one of the mutants who was working for him, this young mutant, and he's like, "Go, my son, you must become the next villain in the first movie, so we can tie this with the first movie." And that's Magneto, who survived the Holocaust.
Wow.
That's my version of X-Men First Class, in between Origins Wolverine and X-Men.
You were right in the beginning, and then it trailed off from there. X-Men First Class is a prequel.
Oh.
It is with the forming of the X-Men.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised I got that right.
But this was the Cuban Missile Crisis sort of plot line. So it's about them stopping that. At the end, Magneto, who starts out as an X-Men, turns evil.
Oh, wow. Oh, I did not see this level of plot twist going on.
Also, this movie just creates a whole bunch of plot holes that don't fit in with the other three movies.
By the way, does Mr. Sinister ever show up in any of these movies?
No.
Do the Sentinels ever show up?
They do.
Oh, crap. I don't know where I'd put... Okay.
You put them in Last Stand originally.
I put them in Last Stand because I thought it was logical. All these titles of these next coming up movies, I don't think I would put a Sentinel in any of these. Okay, the Wolverine. It happens after X-Men Origins Wolverine. It happens before X-Men. I just don't know where it happens in relation with First Class. I'm going to assume Wolverine is in First Class because an X-Men movie can't make money without Hugh Jackman. So I'm going to put in between X-Men Origins Wolverine and X-Men First Class, the Wolverine. I remember some advertisements of Wolverine in Japan during this time. I'm going to say the plot is Wolverine goes to Japan. In the Radix timeline, this is like before he's out in the woods and gets recruited by Xavier. I love how I'm still trying to keep my continuity intact. This is before that, so at some point he's going to have to leave Japan and end up in the woods somewhere. Weapon X is like trying to get their rogue weapon back under control, and they send in freaking, I don't know, Sabretooth. And Sabretooth's like, I am Sabretooth. And Wolverine's like, no, and they fight that's a very simple plot. There's got to be something more to it. Sabretooth kills the freaking Japanese girl and kills everything. Wolverine's like, you ruined everything, and Sabretooth leaves. Wolverine decides to go on a hunt for Sabretooth, ends up in the woods, gets recruited by Professor Xavier.
You got the Japan part right.
So the first sentence, the rest is,
This actually mostly takes place the latest in the timeline, and Wolverine's all bummed out about what happened in Last Stand. So he does go to Japan. There's this flashback sequence that does actually, though, take place after X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he saves this guy from the bomb that went off in Japan during World War II.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's kind
he just covers him with his body as a nuclear bomb goes off, and it saves him.
Okay. All right.
So this guy tries to take Wolverine's healing powers for himself in the future, which is kind of a dick move. You know, he already saved your life.
So the villain is this random Japanese guy who was in the atomic bomb?
Yeah.
Okay. X-Men Days of Future Past. Now, seeing that title, I was initially thinking that was going to be the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's gotta be some sort of time-traveling plot. It probably pulls a freaking Avengers Endgame where they go back in time to several different important plot points. So I'm going to tentatively place it after The Last Stand, but only as in the parts that take place and what we are supposed to perceive as the present take place after X-Men The Last Stand. It's after The Last Stand, they're like, wow, so many people died in Last Stand because of the Sentinels. And we have to, us and our little Magneto alliance we made at the end of the Radix timeline Last Stand, we have to go back in time and stop Magneto, because we've learned that Magneto's a pretty good guy now. We're chilling with him. He's still Jewish. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back in time to the end of the Radix timeline First Class, when a dying Mr. Sinister tells Magneto to become the next villain. We go back in time, and it sort of cuts in and out with First Class. I'm trying to give a what happens in the Radix timeline, and then I'll give another one based off of the context you've given me.
We're two diverging timelines here.
Yeah, but in the Radix timeline, they go back in time to try to help Magneto stop becoming evil, and they teach a young Magneto that it's bad to be evil. The villain is a time traveling dude who's like, you cannot mess around with time. It's freaking because it's the only time traveling character from X-Men I know. It's going to be Cable. Even though I know that
Mr. Sinister.
It's Mr. Sinister from the future after dying. But something happens, some time dude's like, you can't mess around with time, and then they do this thing that they get kicked back to the present, and they realize they can't change time because it's inevitable, and Magneto still did what he did, and something like that. What I think actually happens with the new context you gave me, I don't know. I have no idea. Days of Future Past. Maybe it's still they go back in time because they don't like what happened in The Last Stand. But beyond that, I don't know. Maybe they do a little tie-in with First Class here and there, just to get in the, hey, this was a movie we made recently. I guess in the end, my guess isn't that far off from what I guess for the Radix timeline, which is they go back in time to change something from Last Stand, do some references to First Class, maybe some of the Wolverine prequel stuff. But I'm sure they don't come to the conclusion that time is static and they end up accidentally creating a bunch of timeline crap.
I'd say you're not too far off. I think if you combine both of your timelines, you'd get the right answer. Days of Future Past is set in the future, near future. This is the one with the Sentinels in it.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's a dystopian future where X-Men are being hunted by Sentinels. And they have to go back in time to stop the Sentinels from being created. And which they go back to the after X-Men First Class in that timeline. And then they do succeed, and then an alternate timeline is created, and it's messy.
So next up, we have Deadpool. You're going to hate this, because I have no idea. Deadpool. I'm going to say it might happen in one of those timelines created after Days of Future Past. I'm going to stick it after Days of Future Past, which on my timeline would have it as the most recent, I guess, so far in the list, what we've gotten to so far, but it's in a alternate timeline or something. Deadpool. It's about Deadpool. It probably has something to do with his wife, because his wife was there at Deadpool 2, and I got the feeling like they had a history of something. So maybe she's not even his wife. It's his girlfriend or something. But freaking Cable's got to be in it because they really pushed that dynamic between Cable and Colossus. They really pushed that Colossus Deadpool relationship in Deadpool 2, which tells me that's building off of what happened in Deadpool 1. So it's Deadpool after X-Men Origins Wolverine. He's like, oh, I want to be normal because the fans are demanding that. He breaks the fourth wall and is like, the fans are demanding me to be normal. So he becomes normal and not with his mouth closed and all that. And he's like, yo, Colossus, something happened with my girlfriend. His girlfriend gets kidnapped, because why wouldn't she be? What year did this movie come out?
2016.
2016. We still have the damsel in distress trope. The girlfriend gets kidnapped. Colossus, you gotta help me. The X-Men aren't gonna help, because, I don't know, we don't have the budget for the actors. That was a joke they made in Deadpool 2. And Colossus is like, I am Russian, and then they get together and go freaking. Oh, maybe they can get a freaking something teenage whatever warhead chick,
Very close.
to join in the group, and they like do this little, this terrible trio going out to fight a villain who took the girlfriend of Deadpool. Maybe it's a Weapon X dude who wants Deadpool to get back into the program, and then they fight, and then they do a lot of quips, and then they save the girl.
Not too far off. So Deadpool, it must take place on this new timeline that they created from going back in time and stuff, because like it ignores all the other movies. He does meet this girl, and they fall in love, and then Deadpool, famous part of his origin is that he gets cancer. And he gets his mutant powers through this alternate version of Weapon X. It's not called Weapon X, but it's basically Weapon X. But his girlfriend does get captured, and then, or wife, I suppose. And then he saves her, and yeah. And Colossus is there, and he's Russian. And they did make the joke that they didn't have the budget.
Excellent. Well, okay, that means I just made the same joke in the second movie.
Yeah.
X-Men Apocalypse. Now I remember this being real hyped up, and I remember having no idea who Apocalypse was. So, it was really hyped up, which tells me it was supposed to be this big thing. I'm going to put it at the very end of where we are at so far. Apocalypse, big blue guy. I know that much. I think he's from the future. Or is he from, like, the ancient past? He's from some different time. And he's like, I'm going to go to the present. So he comes to the present. I don't know how. Maybe he forgot how to walk through time. He's so powerful, he goes back in time. And or forward in time, or whatever. I guess everyone moves forward in time. So either he is from the future and he's so powerful he went back in time, or he's super ancient and he's so super powerful that he just doesn't die for a long time and makes it to the present. Either way, he pops up in our good old 2000 whatever, and he's like, yo, I'm Apocalypse, listen up, I'ma destroy everything. And the X-Men are like, haha, we're the X-Men, we will stop you. And then the X-Men fight him, and probably the government's like, we can't trust mutants, but then like the Apocalypse thing happens, and like, we need the mutants, because we haven't learned our lesson from like previous movies from by now. And like the X-Men are like, we are fighting all I think this is about is just a big fight against one really powerful bad guy that they've never fought someone so powerful before. Maybe Magneto does some things and helps out. Maybe this is actually where they team up with Magneto. That's all. I'm sure they defeat him somehow. If Last Stand has the freaking Phoenix stuff, they can't get away with not bringing in Phoenix stuff against Apocalypse. But is like Jean like alive, or is she like, I don't know, it's X-Men, sure, I guess she's alive, because nobody stays dead. Jean never stays dead. So maybe Jean's there and uses some Phoenix stuff on Apocalypse, and it's like, oh, that's the super powerful thing from freaking Last Stand. And then Apocalypse was like, no, I got defeated. And then the fans are like, hey, that's a reference to the whole Phoenix stuff from Last Stand. That's what I think happens in X-Men Apocalypse.
You're pretty close.
Jesus.
It is a guy from the past who's super powerful. His name is Apocalypse. And then they team up to fight him in the end. And Jean Grey does her Phoenix powers and kills them.
Of course. Because why wouldn't she? Does Jean die? I vaguely remember somewhere along this point Jean dies.
Jean died in Last Stand, but that never happened, and she's a... That's right. At the end of Days of Future Past, there was a plot twist that Jean was alive in current day.
Next on the list, Logan. Alright, people won't shut up about Logan, so I think I got the idea. I'm going to stick Logan at the farthest point in the timeline so far, after X-Men Apocalypse. Logan is old. I remember from like the trailers, I just remember Logan, some little girl, and Charles all in like a car, like doing some sort of road trip. I have this vague understanding of the Old Man Logan series where like all the villains get together and like destroy everything. So I'm gonna say in Logan, all the villains get together and like destroy the X-Mansion. Everyone's dead except for Charles apparently, and Wolverine's just physically can't die until he does. Charles is sad because I know this is like a freaking Johnny Cash song turned into a movie. So like Charles says, like, I lost everything, Logan. And Logan's like, I'm still here, bub. Let's go on a road trip across America. We're going to just see the West Coast. And Charles is like, okay. And somewhere along the line, they find this girl. And, like, maybe she's, like, the last, like, mutant or something. Or maybe she has something in her bloodline that's going to, like, help build up. Maybe like Charles looks at this kid who's immune, is like, I could make a school of 1 children again. And Wolverine's like, you're insane, Professor, but let's kidnap this child. The villains are probably hunting down this child because I'm sure it's actually something special about her and not Charles just wanting to build a new school. Some villains chase them. Eventually Wolverine dies because everyone's seen the scene where Wolverine dies.
Wow. Spoiler. Again, you're getting good at this. It is set the farthest in the future about Wolverine and Xavier and this little girl going across the country. It's set in
They're
the future
actually
where
going
there's no
across
more
the
mutants.
country? Is it like a road trip thing?
They're trying to get to Canada
Why
to
are they
like
trying
extradite or something. Because it's a rumor that there's a safe haven for mutants in Canada. I know Xavier accidentally killed all of his students with his mind.
Jesus Christ! Okay, I understand why he's sad now.
But the government eventually started hunting down mutants. And so there's not many left.
Oh, wow.
And turns out that the government actually created the little girl. And she's a clone of Wolverine.
Oh, wow. They took the time to change his gender?
Yeah, they modified some things.
So if you're cloning, they had to, like, make a conscious effort to change the chromosomes then. So
Yes. Because there is a perfect clone of Wolverine in the movie as well. And he's just normal.
So they took let's just change these chromosomes.
And Wolverine dies at the end.
How does Wolverine die exactly? Because I was under the impression that, like, one of his superpowers was not dying.
That's the thing, is that in this movie, Wolverine is slowly dying and starting to age more and is losing his healing factor because of his adamantium skeleton. It's killing him. So eventually he takes this drug that's supposed to soup him up for the final battle, but it also, once the drug wears off, it accelerates his aging and dying.
Okay.
So he sacrifices himself to save the kid.
I am actually disturbed at how many that I was kind of close with. Deadpool 2, I've seen Deadpool 2. I'm gonna put it after Deadpool, but is Apocalypse and Deadpool in the same timeline?
Apocalypse was set in the 90s.
Oh, Apocalypse was set in the... Oh, crap, then my timeline was really weird. After Deadpool, I watched Deadpool 2, freaking the girl dies, and then, like, Deadpool wants to die, but then, like, blah blah blah, Colossus is Russian. You had the fat Hispanic kid with fire powers, a correctional like mutant thing. I've seen Deadpool 2. You just have to believe me. I just can't tell you what happens. To recap my timeline, freaking X-Men Origins Wolverine fights in some wars, gets recruited by Weapon X, goes rogue after he gets an adamantium skeleton, realizes that Weapon X is evil. They modify Deadpool to be weird and send Deadpool after him. Wolverine defeats him. End credit scene, he's out in the woods, gets recruited by Xavier. The Wolverine is in this weird Radix timeline, a prequel, where he's out in Japan before he goes out into the woods. Sabretooth kills everyone, he goes back to the woods, and that's when Xavier recruits him. First Class, Xavier puts together a First Class, they fight freaking Mr. Sinister apparently, and there's a young Magneto, and Magneto becomes evil because they killed killed Mr. Sinister. X-Men, Magneto's evil, they defeat Magneto. X2, the weird cure stuff goes on. The Last Stand, Magneto's back to his crap again, and the Sentinels are deployed, and there's a fight scene, but Magneto joins together with the X-Men. Days of Future Past, they go back in time to stop Magneto from becoming evil, but they fail. Deadpool, essentially exactly what happened in Deadpool. I wasn't too far off. Something about Weapon X, something about kidnapping his girlfriend / wife / whatever. Apocalypse, which also wasn't really too far off, apparently set in the 90s in the canon timeline. In the Radix timeline, modern day apparently, Phoenix Force destroys everything. Deadpool 2 is Deadpool 2 and Logan is... Okay, honestly, I am concerned with how similar some of these, like how much I predicted what happened in these. That's a problem. I've only seen Deadpool 2. I've seen some trailers for some of these movies. I've seen like small little snippets of like the original trilogy when I was like real young. And of course everyone's seen the freaking Logan dying stuff. So how would you grade my Radix timeline? How would you grade it for accuracy, and how would you grade it against the canon timeline?
I'd say accuracy. Somehow you got pretty close.
Yes, I've only seen Deadpool 2.
I'd give you a solid B.
Okay, didn't even study.
You know, I think I like your timeline better.
My timeline at least is somehow like Days of Future Past ends with them
Your
realizing
timeline tries to connect everything together more than the actual series stuff.
Hopefully it's not as confusing, but this video is coming out because the Dark Phoenix or whatever is coming out, and I'm trying to get on trendy topics. This is going to be a pain to edit, but whatever.
The mutants are people too.
At least some people think so. Thank you guys for watching. My resident X-Men expert here is Ultrox Infinity. The link to his channel is in the description. He frequently makes X-Men videos.
All the time.
All the time. And yeah, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.